Marcia Pearlstein for Port Townsend Film Festival, interviewing Curtis Shortchild of To, the Story of Roman and Nyro. Welcome, Curtis.
Thank you so much.
So, everybody watching this interview knows what your film is about, but what kind of was the first precipitating moment that made you think you're going to take all this footage you have and make a film? Because they're natural filmings that you've been doing.
Well, in the beginning, the whole piece started off as a video diary of Angela Whitaker, who was our surrogate. And she had a friend who had a camera, and when we had decided that we were going to go forward with attempting to have a child, she said, I have a friend with a camera, I'd love to do some interviews. We said, great, that'd be something that the boys would love. Well, I didn't say the boys, I say the boys now, but what the baby would love to know. We wanted them to know where they came from. And so it very organically started from that, and then Desmond and I joined in on some interviews, and over the years we just gathered footage, and we would have home movies and mark certain markers like their blessing, baptism, and Desmond and I exchanging vows and birthdays, and we just chronicled all these years. And it was about 3 years ago that we connected with Heather Winters, who is a wonderful director and producer, and she decided to sign on as our director, and she was able to hone through 300 hours of footage, 12 years of footage.
Wow.
And she also conceived of some new interviews, which is where two really came together when she interviewed Roman and Nyro themselves. And so as 9-year-old boys, they are able to tell the story of their family and share it with the world.
Well, conceived is a very interesting word because it was so magical, the relationship between the two of you and your surrogate, and it still continues to be. And so if it's 12 years, of course, there wasn't just one photographer. Who did the most of the shooting?
Well, initially, Dee Nichols was Angela's friend, and he shot really through the first year. And then over time, I shot some things, and we took on various other camera people and different interviews. And it's all just kind of organically come together over the years.
Now, how old are Roman and Nyro now?
They're 9 years. No, they're 11 years old. They were 9 years old
when you started.
When we started.
That's what I was wondering. And what's it been like for them? I mean, the film has gotten a lot of attention. What's that been like for them?
Well, as you can imagine, an 11-year-old boy probably doesn't want anyone to see pictures of them as a little kid, or especially if they're naked, or especially if they're being born. And so initially they were, I think they were a little upset at the idea of it, but in the same breath I realized that we were okay, because Roman's biggest beef with the whole thing was that he was wearing a Barcelona jersey instead of the Chelsea team that he was really rooting for. He had dropped Barcelona and moved on to Chelsea. So I realized that it wasn't terribly deep, his discomfort with it. And in fact, we've been so fortunate over the summer to play in different film festivals. And in San Francisco, we were in the Doc Fest there. Nyro, I had a hard time getting the microphone away from his hands. And I was trying to make a comment, and took a while to get it away. And then he grabbed it right back. And at the very end of the Q&A, he said, and I'd like to announce my candidacy for the presidency of the United States in 2035. And he had done the math in his head, like, how old will I have to be? And it was very cute. So I think that they understand that we're standing up in such a visible way and sharing such a personal story, because I think we've been trying to teach them that you can't take for granted your rights. Some of us still have to fight for equality, and they're seeing us doing that, and that's what we want them to carry on in their lives as they go on.
Well, and tell me how they get to be just so bright and creative and charming and dear. They're the best.
Well, thank you. I would agree with you. But I think, we talk to them about everything. don't hold back. I mean, of course, it's all been age suitable, you know. In fact, one of the highlights in the film is there being the American Fertility Association honored our family as Family of the Year in the fertility, and so I had the boys accept the award. And the fact was, they didn't really know what fertility really was. You know, they didn't really know where babies came from. They knew, we've always talked to them about how they came to be, and that we had taken a piece from Daddy and a piece from an egg donor and put them together and in Angela, and then they were able to come forth. But they never really understood the process that most people get here by. So
now they're getting to, and they're progressing in age, and so
right.
You're right.
So they're in 6th grade, so they've learned, you know, more and more, and they're just informed. But we talk, you know, Desmond's youngest brother passed away from AIDS. I think it's 20 some years ago. And so we took them to Washington, D.C. when the Names Project quilt was there. And we talked to them about that. We talked to them, even though we're living on the front lines in Nashville, Tennessee. And I remember the first year that they were somewhat aware of or questioning what politics were, you know, we had a Obama sign in the front of our house, and everybody around us had McCain-Palin signs. And they were asking, well, why, you know, what is that? What is that? And at a certain point, it was hard for me because it felt like I was educating them in the way that people might be unkind to them, but it's also educating them in the ways of the world so that they would be prepared if they would be caught off guard by something. But happily, I can say that it's been very rare that we've ever had any unpleasant experience of living on the front lines in Nashville.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty wonderful. But they will be prepared should it come up, because
right.
They're so articulate in defending or in understanding what a truly solid family you all are.
Well, and they really, you know, they're exposed to. I mean, Desmond's family is Cuban from Miami, so he has a whole realm of his family. My family is more traditional Midwestern from Missouri. Angela's family is she's a former Mormon from the San Francisco area, and Desmond's father's family is Hungarian. So you know they have these pieces, all these different pieces that make up who they are.
Well, that leads me to an incredible question. How did Angela's family handle her incubation process?
Well, you know, she never would have gone forward with it if she didn't have the support of her parents. And, you know, the funny thing was I had known Angela in Nashville. I just knew her. I met her a couple of times. But when we met her together or saw her together in India with the How to Know God conference with Deepak Chopra, she was there with her mother. And so it was one of those moments where we just kind of came together. We spent all of our time together. We would share seats or save seats for one another, share all of our meals together. And because her mother was there, she met us. And when everything started to unfold, because she had met us and knew us, I think that helped her. But even Angela's father, the boys were a year old before we ever met him, or before he ever had kind of put himself out. I think he was a little bit reticent to put himself out there. He was supportive of his daughter, and she never would have done it without his support. And I think Ruby, you know, in the way that any parent would be cautious about their child doing something like this, because, you know, normally in this kind of a situation, the surrogate would have already had a child. And we were kind of a unique situation, or one of the first, in that Angela had never had a child before. So how could she really know what she was getting into without having had that experience? But we were fortunate to partner with Growing Generations, a wonderful agency out of California, that helped us go through the psychological hoops and talked us through everything, and they decided that we would be the first family that they would help whose surrogate had never had a child before. And
They picked the right one. She's tremendous.
she's unbelievable, and to this day one of my dearest, best friends, and her heart is just a heart of gold, and she is a dear part of our family and a fairy godmother to the children. And her mother and father have gone on to be wonderful grandparents. We lost Angela's father this last year.
So you gave them an opportunity to grandparent long before they would have had it.
Right.
And so,
Right.
so let's segue into you and Desmond as parents. Of course, we can tell the products are wonderful. Those kids are tremendous, as I said before. But you do such mindful parenting, and I was really impressed. You just mentioned how the kids had been with you in San Francisco, but they can't come here now because they have soccer and
They're in school
and all their activities. And I was so pleased to see that you don't want them to be celebrities. You want them to have a regular life. Your parenting and the kids come first.
Well, and that's part of why we've chosen to live in Nashville, because really we could live anywhere we wanted to. Desmond is a successful songwriter, and he can write music anywhere. And we have lived in California, we've lived in New York, we've lived in Miami, and I love Nashville. And I think that it just kind of, Desmond was one of the songwriters that wrote Livin' La Vida Loca for Ricky Martin. And so we always say we live La Vida Loca. And Nashville provides a stability or a groundedness that I think will only serve them as they get older.
Do you know other queer families in Nashville?
We do, and the funny thing is that the school community we joined and became a part of, they at the time already had maybe 5 other families. Either it was a single lesbian mom or a 2-mom family. We actually have a trans family in our school, and then later we've had a 2-dad family join. So it's been a lovely community. The school themselves already had billed themselves as the island of misfit toys, which I totally relate to and have always imagined, being a part of. But we've been really lucky with that, and our friend Becca Stevens, Reverend Becca Stevens, is an Episcopal priest, and I grew up in the Methodist Church, and I loved going to church. But as I went through adolescence and became a young adult, for obvious reasons, being aware of the hypocrisy that often religion poses for people like us, I had pulled away from the church. But Becca has a wonderful church, and they do wonderful work in Nashville. And it's been, I'm not a regular churchgoer, but I actually like going, and I'll take the boys there, and Desmond will go occasionally too. And so that's been a nice thing too, to show them that, because I don't want them, the teachings of Christ were all about loving one another and being with the outcast, and somewhere that message gets lost in some people's, ears. But I feel really good that community is there for us, and there's a lot of nature, and it's a really easy place to live.
And what I'm discovering is we did a panel on our radio show, People of Faith, who were pro-gay marriage, which passed, of course, in the state. And I'm discovering that the lowest common denominator is a very religious message, which is treat each other as you want to be treated. And
you would think that conservatives would be all for gay marriage, because it's all about monogamy and commitment and family. And the fact, I think part of why we did this movie was, as we've gone through life, I see and I strive to live a life similar, or influenced by the childhood that I had growing up. My mother was a wonderful baker, and we would go to church every Sunday, and it was, we had a really great sense of family. And so that informs this life that we choose to live now.
Well, it's all about stability and security. And they're giving me the signal that we're going to have to wrap up. Very quickly, is there anything I haven't asked you that you think the people watching this need to know about your film, your family?
Well, the biggest thing that we've realized is, or the message that we're conveying is, love is the guider to truth, and love is what makes a family.
What an appropriate note to end on. Thank you, Curtis Shawchild.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Is there any way that folks watching this can find out more about your family, your film?
We have a website which is TWO, thedocumentary.com, and we'll have information there about future screenings, and we're hoping to have a theatrical release starting in January of 2014.
Were you surprised by all the attention that this film has gotten and all the acclaim?
Surprised because in some ways it's been so personal. It feels like it's a collection of our home movies, and I'm just so happy that people are interested, and we're happy to get the word out.
Thank you, Curtis. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.